following is intended only for mature audiences.
Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's J-Man. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm J-Man. And it's just me. And I'm going to get right into it. Yesterday, at the scene of the George Floyd Memorial, a crew showed up unannounced and began removing the concrete barriers that block the intersections into the neighborhood that's been called the George Floyd Square or George Floyd Autonomous Zone or the Free State of George Floyd, and then removing memorial items to make the area accessible to vehicles. And a lot of people were pissed off, as evidenced by Twitter, and many of these people were talking about how it was so disrespectful, it was so wrong, how could they do this, wait until after Derek Chauvin's been sentenced, wait until after those other cops have had their trial and sentencing. And I just have to ask, how long do you fuckwits expect this to go on? Because it's just flowers, the mural is still there, the memory's still there, his effect on society is still going, and you're not taking the time to recognize what's really going on here. After that happened, the barriers went up. A group of citizens decided that they were going to police this 4-block area on their own, and that the police weren't welcome, and they did everything they could to keep them out, just like they did in Portland, just like they did in Seattle. And frankly, it's fucking ridiculous that they would even aim to do something after how fantastically the previous two failed. Moreover, people were mad that it wasn't announced they were going to do this. Why do you think that is, smarty pants? This was done without any sort of spectacle or any sort of media attention to avoid conflict and possible other protesting from it. People are saying, how dare the city of Minneapolis, but Mayor Jacob Frey was like, I didn't know this was going to happen. And a couple other council members have gone on record saying they were unaware this was going to happen. And I can see why, because loose lips sink ships. If a few people find out, then a few more people find out, then everybody finds out, then everybody descends on that place, and they can't accomplish the one goal they have, reopening the intersection. Now, for the record, it was not the city of Minneapolis who did this. It was Agape, A-G-A-P-E, and they were contracted by the city to manage the memorial and just that area right there. And that's what they were doing. After mounting pressure from the public, they decided, we're sick of all the complaints, and more importantly, and this is the point of this episode, the crime that has taken over that area that wasn't like that prior to the barriers going in and the memorial being put where it was. Everybody's sick and tired of it. The residents, the businesses, the other people living on the outer ring. I mean, you've got your contingent of social justice warriors that are all like, well, Black Lives Matter and we need to keep that memorial going and nobody should come in there, which is very childish. If I'm being brutally honest, that's how a little kid would frame this in their mind. Well, I want it to be this and you can't do that or else it's hurting my feelings. Fuck your feelings. The likelihood that anybody commenting about this or crying about it online or in the media is directly affected by the removal of those barricades is slim to none, if any. On the other side of the fence, you have realists who have the presence of mind to accept the fact that whether or not the memorial is there and the barricades are there and the area is closed off and you keep the police out, it's not going to change the fact that he's dead or that we've got the sweeping change. It's not going to undo any of the harm. In fact, his legacy is everywhere, all over the nation, not just in Minneapolis, and they've heard about it all over the world. I've read articles with people as far away as Australia going, I know all about George Floyd. I hear about it all the time, and I live down under. So they're on the opposite side of the fucking planet, and it's gotten to them because of the 24-hour news cycle. The removal of the blockades and parts of the memorial that were blocking the intersection to reopen it up was an inevitability. The emotional people are going to whine and cry no matter what, but the intelligent ones knew this was coming. I like to refer to this camp of people as adults, at least in emotional maturity, because they don't let their feelings get in the way of the truth. The impact of his death does not change just because they move this shit. So to those people that are sitting there pissing and moaning about this being taken down, I frankly have to say this to you. The city owns the streets, not the people who occupy them. They don't owe you advance notice. Neither your feelings on the issue, nor your demands for any sort of social change. None of that supersedes the need for safety in that area, for those businesses and those residents. And like I said already, they had to do this covertly to avoid confrontation and possible rioting or violence or any of that shit. It's another concept that intelligent and emotionally mature people are aware of. Sane people understand that this needs to happen because it is no secret how shitty it has gotten around there. In the 7-week period after Floyd's death, 11 people were shot and 233 gunfire incidents were reported in the area, which did not have a single gunfire incident reported during the same stretch of time the previous year. Some gang members used the barricades around the site to control entrance to the area, allowing illicit businesses to continue undisturbed, and then ultimately an illegal arms dealer used the site for gun sales. That's from a November 12th article in the Star Tribune. According to printed signs posted at the entrances to the barricaded region along Chicago Avenue, the zone is maintained by the Central Area Neighborhood Development Center and the American Friends Service Committee. These organizations have asked visitors to respect the memorial area, quote, as you would any space dedicated for mourning and remembrance, end quote, such as the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. That is from a March 17th article from this year in the Vision Times. And to that I state, fuck you to compare this memorial site to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Do you not have any grasp of the magnitude of what this country went through culturally due to Vietnam? You are comparing a mountain to a molehill in terms of loss of life. One man's death may have caused an entire wave of change and a movement to start and an opening of people's eyes. But, and this is a big but, in the names of all the soldiers that died in that conflict and the families that were affected adversely afterwards, it's not even on par. Tens of thousands of people died, and it permanently changed our society. And the memorial to them is sacred because of their sacrifice. Now, George didn't willingly sacrifice his life. It was taken from him, and he didn't deserve to die that day. And I'm not saying that I think it's okay just because he had a criminal record that he was treated that way. Somebody should have probably fucking punched Derek Chauvin in the back of the head and taken one for the team to get them off of George Floyd. But I'll be goddamned if I'm going to read that shit and not fly off the handle. That is fucking ridiculous. Imagine if somebody's like, well, the George Floyd Memorial should be treated as hallowed ground, just like the 9/11 Memorial. Fucking no. They're not the same thing. It could be treated as a memorial site and like any other spot where somebody was murdered, but it does not hold the same level of sanctity as a national monument from an international conflict where so many people died. So to whoever said that and reprinted it, spare me your hyperbole. I get your point, but you're wrong. This area is not just about the George Floyd Memorial. It's important for the sake of those that own homes and businesses in that area, many of them minorities themselves, that they can live in peace and feel safe. Jesus Christ. Like, there's a group of black-owned businesses at the intersection that had formed the 38th Street Black Business Collective in early April of 2021 to advocate for financial assistance from the city to reopen the intersection. The group said it had joined the community in calling for justice for Floyd, but they believed that the autonomous zone had, quote, unintended economic downfall for local businesses by using them as a sacrificial lamb. And the group members also said that the closure of the intersection resulted in a reduced police presence that then led to rising crime and lowered business revenue. That is from a April 7th article in the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder. I don't know why anybody wouldn't look at this and say, oh, well, there's been a bunch of crime going on, and there's been shootings and robberies. They have, I don't know how many times in the news I've seen business owners that have been robbed multiple times that said enough of this shit. The city needs to step in and take these barricades out so the police can come through and stop this crime wave that's going on in this area. And those interviews were months ago. And then yesterday I turned on K-Fan during the Bumper to Bumper program with Dan Barrero. And he brings up this lady that lives in the area. And he was reading her account of how her life has been affected adversely by this stupid autonomous zone. And her complaint was she has to get up extra early and leave at an ungodly hour to get to work on time because I have to go all around hell because I can't go through that intersection. And then the same thing when she's coming home. And that's just how it affects her commute. Imagine if you live there. I'm sure it wasn't a fucking utopia before George Floyd's death. Okay, but in a 7-week period after his death, 11 people were shot, 233 gunfire incidents. That's a lot of shit for people to have to worry about around their homes. And then you got the businesses. And like I said, one guy talked about being robbed multiple times. And he also said that there were gangs going around with protection schemes like the mafia would do in Russia, extorting these guys to make sure that they stayed safe. What it really means is pay us or we're going to fucking rob you again. That's the kind of shit that's going on because of the reduced police presence. You need the police. Defund is an idiotic term because what that means is you want no money for the police, so there can't be a police. You can't pay them without the funds, right? So you think that everything's going to be magically better if we just don't have cops? Have you ever watched a Wild West movie? What happens when some dickheads in a gang roll up into town on their horses and then the sheriff walks up and goes, you're going to have to check your guns in here. We don't allow them in town. And then they're like, fuck you. And they shoot him. And then they rob the town and they burn some shit. And then they start a fight in the saloon and they drink the whiskey and maybe they rape a few of the hookers that work there. I mean, that's basically the kind of shit that's going on now, just less Blazing Saddles-esque. Right? You got people running extortion schemes for protection, shootings. I mean, for fuck's sakes, there was a shooting on May 25th, the day that people got together to celebrate the anniversary of George Floyd's death, fucking gunfire and people scattering. I got that out of the LA Times. See how I'm using sources to back up my information? Unlike a lot of people that just spout opinion based upon emotions, like, how dare they take down the memorial? Oh my God. Oh, we don't want the police because we're angry at them. You need the fucking police. And yes, they're going to put up a permanent statue to memorialize George Floyd there. And then the big fist thingy, whatever the fuck they got, that stayed. All the other shit, gone. But other people on Twitter like, they should have turned it into a roundabout and just left it as is. They've had a whole fucking year to do that, and they haven't been able to figure it out because the city council can't stop warring with each other on whether they should or should not get rid of the police. So yeah, just like when there was the Jamar Clark protests and they had to clear out in front of the 4th precinct because all the squatters were there with their tents and their captain's chairs and their fucking little bonfire pits and playing hacky sack and really helping save the world. Yeah, you guys are doing so much by showing up to drop fucking flowers there. So to all these people that say, how dare you get rid of the memorial? Again, doesn't take away the impact his death has had on society. And moreover, instead of bitching on Twitter, how much advocacy have you fucking engaged in? How much changing of things have you actively gotten involved in doing? Like, have you gone out to assist the black community, to help them heal? Have you done anything at all other than grab your phone and fire off what you thought was some morally imperative horse shit that you concocted during your coffee break to make yourself sound cool and feel better about yourself? Very few of you, I'm willing to bet. And if you're so gung-ho about change, then I tell you what, why don't you quit your job that you get paid to do, and then you can go spend all your time down around 38th in Chicago at the fucking memorial, and you can walk the streets of that neighborhood to dissuade the gangbangers with their illegal guns committing the crimes that they do from partaking in all that shit. You be the change. You be the social worker or the counselor that goes in and magically says all the right things to make them completely alter their outlook on life. Give them all the reason in the world to believe in hope and change, instead of just being a pissant on social media, acting like you're doing so much, and at the same time shouting at all the people that are saying, enough of this shit, open the fucking intersection, let's get the cops back in there, let's reclaim the streets, let's make the residents feel safe, let's make the businesses profitable again for the minority owners, let's make all of the fucking gears in the machine turn instead of grind. Let's save this area. Why don't you do that? Why don't you encourage that? Instead of this bullshit white knight mentality of, oh my God, they took away the flowers and they cleaned up the barriers, now cars are going through.
Aw, bitch. bitch.
Shit, at this point, I'm surprised the fucking battle hasn't broke out in that area between the residents and business owners and the so-called protectors of that zone. You know, the gatekeepers that get to decide who comes and who goes, that have been stopping the police from coming in, that have been allowing the crime to go on, whether directly or indirectly. It's not rocket science, it's Gumby math. Your mere presence, allowing this to continue, and not letting the police in and monitoring this zone has led to all this other violence and crime and all these other adverse living conditions for the residents and business owners. Any blood of anyone who died is on your hands, you fucking idiots. It truly is shocking to me that nobody has gotten fed up enough to walk up to those protectors of that area, those gatekeepers there at the barricades, and popped one of those motherfuckers off out of frustration. Because if that was my neighborhood, I probably would have thrown some big fucking rocks or ran up with a baseball bat and creamed one of those motherfuckers and then ran off into the night because of all the shit that's gone down just because they won't let the police in. You don't fucking own that area. Just because George died there doesn't mean that because you're claiming to be on his side, you get to call the shots of who comes and who goes. There should have been an uprising within like a week after that went up. But apparently nobody wants to take it upon themselves to try to solve the problem with a little bit of antagonism or confrontation. That's where we're at as a society. This neighborhood has been asking the city. They've gone about it the diplomatic and polite way. Good on them for keeping their cool, but they've lived with this shit for so fucking long. Enough is enough. So stop your whining and your crying about the memorial being gone. And I heard that as soon as the smoke was clear and they got the fuck out of there with the removal crews, that makeshift barricades were put back up. So this is going to lead to another fucking incident. Just stand down, you dummies. Let the city do its job. Let the cops do their job. Let everything go back to normal and let these residents and business owners have their fucking freedom and safety and peace of mind back. If you truly care about citizens and other people like you claim you do, then you realize that this situation is bigger than one man. It's about the movement, but it's also about everybody around that movement and that culture that gets caught up in the undertow of that tide. In this instance, it's a lot of business owners and people that live in houses that, without their approval, had their entire fucking neighborhood and way of life overtaken. And that is not okay. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm J-Man. And that's the end.